in New England. Those two merged in 1931 and became the Congregational-Christian Church. The other two denominations in our denomination were the Evangelical and Reformed. Virtually no blacks in those denominations. They were German and Dutch.
Which Germans?
Some of them are older than the country. They came across the Atlantic as a congregation. The Evangelical Church had a strong track record in terms of not starting any black congregations, but in terms of health care and settlement houses during the Great Migration. They merged in 1934, so now you got Congregational Christian, Evangelical, and Reformed. In 57, they merged to become United Church of Christ.
To me,
57.
Back then, wasn't the Hitler thing popular
57,
in this nation?
Really, assimilation.
And where was the,
was big.
Hold on, where was the evangelicals on the Hitler thing about manifest destiny among the evangelicals? I never heard them preach against sovereign right or special chosen people. If the evangelicals started off separate, then again, probably like their fathers, those people from Germany seem to be subject to a superiority spirit. Now, I don't mean nothing harm by saying those people, but it seems like they were more subject to this superior flaunting arrogance in the face of God, of how special they were. Notice he said, majority of the evangelical was of German descent, which is, if you look in any social book, you will see during the migration that the majority of the people that migrated here, Germans had it hands down, 142 million at one count, and then the Irish, and then the Italian, et cetera, et cetera. But they were the majority. Therefore, their Christianity could have, because it brought a separation, they would help the poor. But now, something was wrong in the foundation of the Christianity in this country. And people that are awakened today aren't buying it. So the only real way you can really show that you are a real follower of Christ is not by how much you have, but how much do you share. You have to show your care, or it's just words. In other words, they just gave words, you know. But in fact, I'm still going back and separate myself from your black ass, if I can say it like that, to the evangelicals as far as dealing with the blacks, other than coming down and giving them food. William Seymour thrown out of the movement that God used to birth. In other words, man, these people, let me reframe that. The people that were from Europe that grabbed a hold of anything, whether it be William Seymour, whether it be the land, whether it be whatever it is, they have this spirit to want to be first and superior. That's my point. And you have that spirit here because you do have people of German ascent here. It could be a generation curse. I'm not blaming any individual, but you better look at it, because that same spirit is trying to raise his head up today about this presidency. And the bottom line is the prophecies that went over Trump, we're going to wait and see. But if they don't come to pass, it's the proof that the evangelical, as far as the white supremacy, privilege, we're going to preach this gospel around this whole world, look the other way on wars in Muslim countries or whatever, and not a shot fired on capitalism and greed and excess. Let me say this, the devil's got a church too. Either believers were blind and they just don't know, they're ignorant, or they do know, those that do know, but they love to have it first, because in our culture, because we teach competition not for the whole, but competition just for the sake of competition, which competition in itself is not bad, but the way we use it as to say he's better than the rest. But we notice in sports, it takes the full team, and one person can blow the whole thing. I think from God's perspective, family is family, white, black, pink, or polka dot. The catch is, if there's anyone that's been left behind, left out, and where I see it is in the area of land, where blacks, some blacks got land, many did not. But when you talk about reparations now the evangelical voice should come up. But instead, therefore, the conservatives who is against reparations. Again, you still have this spirit, has his ugly head up. It would tell you not to go to the club, not to smoke weed, and not to commit adultery or fornication. But it would never, ever deny elitism, the spirit in which Satan said, I'm going to exalt and be like God. I'm superior. I am this. I see all that stuff right there. Church it's in the black church with our own leaders. There is only members one of another in the body of Christ, if I got this right, with different callings. Therefore, any sign of elitism, of superiority one over another, are so privileged and deserving, even though you do have double honor for leadership, not excessively, because then you will avoid out having the same care one for another, and you will have division. And when you have division, the devil has a foothold in your community and in your neighborhood. Simply said, Crips and Bloods, because you have too much care for one member being a fivefold minister, it will cause respect to persons, which sin opens the door for sin now, excess, and covetousness, lust of the eyes, plus the pride of life. Thus, when you reach that point, the culture in African American neighborhoods with the black males, they will reject that elitism. The only way to reach them is because they don't know in their DNA, anything that comes supreme, they're going to automatically reject. Anything that doesn't come, that's what the Pharisees missed it in. They missed it. They lost their stewardship because they wanted God to come supreme and make them supreme. He didn't come and confirm them. Instead, he told them about their sin and that they all were sinners. He showed them. And then their refusal to even acknowledge it is what caused their doom and downfall. Those people that the Bible wrote about. Now, today, this elite thing, manifest destiny, call it what you want, must be destroyed. Members one of another having the same care for one another, and especially with money. I mean, once your building is paid for, the church building, and pastor is, he's okay, the woman of God is okay, okay? Okay is okay. Necessities and a little bit of extras. But if you lavish excesses on your pastors, you're going to show the superiority spirit. It can change colors. It may start in Europe, but it'll get in your pastor and in your apostle and in yourself. And you would think that you are better than others. You will look down on them, become more judgmental. And you would definitely say them Negroes out in them streets ain't worth changing any of my views about money to meet them where they are and gather in the harvest. It would be business as usual. We're going to see in 2021 who learned, who's goats, who's sheep. Churches will be known by their fruit. Leaders will be known by their fruit, by what they do, not what they say.
In all of the predominantly white denominations,
Evangelical.
hoped for an integrated community. And in '59, they began talking to the assistant pastor of the Congregational Church of Park Manor because blacks were moving south into the far south corridor of Chicago. And when they started moving south, listen carefully, the denomination said, we need a church for the homeowners moving into this community. Now, Jesus can talk all that whosoever will he want, but we don't want whosoever will. We want home-owning Negroes who know how to worship properly. Because the church was right next to the project. We don't want the people in the project. They ain't trying to start no church. That project been there since World War II. We don't want them. We want home-owning Negroes.
Which will be your
who know how to
disciples.
worship properly. They know how they can speak the King's English properly, but they don't be shouting and falling out and waving their hands and hollering and carrying on. We have New England worship.
So
That's how the church was started. And the founding pastor, we got letters where he wrote to the denomination saying we're still having trouble attracting our kind of people. When they built their first sanctuary, they would not put on the sanctuary. By now, 1961 is when Trinity was founded. That's 4 years after the United Church of Christ, right? They wouldn't put United Church of Christ on the sign because they didn't want black folk in the black community to think this was a Church of God in Christ or Church of Christ. So they put Trinity United Church, parenthesis, congregational, to show you what kind of worship we have. We have congregational worship.
So whatever that
So
means.
61 to 65, we had this nice little Negro church on the far south side of Chicago called Trinity United Church. The charter reads Trinity United Church of Christ, but we wouldn't say that out loud because we didn't want the wrong kind of people coming there to worship. Our pastor left in 66, our founding pastor. Our second pastor walked into a buzzsaw. He walked into the same thing that Lyndon Baines Johnson walked into and that Ralph David Abernathy walked into. After Kennedy's, ask not what you can do for your country, ask what you're... Didn't nobody want to hear Lyndon Baines Johnson talking about Buffalo Bourbons? What's wrong with... Now, Johnson was a much more seasoned politician, but he wasn't Kennedy. He didn't have the Camelot aura. Our second pastor, same thing, he wasn't our founding pastor. Dr. King behind, I have a dream. Ralph David Abernathy had a PhD before King finished college. They didn't want, I'm talking about we shall overcome. They didn't want it. Why? He wasn't king, that's why. And our second pastor wasn't our founding pastor. He came in 67. Guess what happened in 68? We had a photojournalist, news journalist, who used to say, it's enough to make a Negro turn black. In 1968, Negroes turned black, Doc. James Brown, say it loud.
Yes.
Carlos and Tommy at the Olympics, and the neighborhood turned black. People with dashikis, naturals out to here, Angela Davis,
No more
Fred
European.
Hampton, please remember.
And this is
69,
why one clip
they
called
murdered
White
Fred Hampton
Supremacy
and Clark.
on this
Murdered.
Facebook page. You look it up.
Blacks, we got super black, black.
You'll hear this confirmed
And
by
this at this nice little Negro church
white believers that were in the
in the
evangelical movement.
community that had turned black on them, and the church started dying. We went from 400 members down to 87. Why? 68, I don't know if you're old.
It was a
but
distaste in
68
their
was
mouth.
also the year that
There was
gospel
an
music
awakening.
hit the black college campuses.
Awakening.
Prior to 68, there
Today,
was no gospel music
there's an
allowed on the
awakening
black
and a
college
vacuum
campus because the missionaries
of
had told us
churches.
that's not sacred.
Misrepresentation of
We sang, you're the
Christ.
anthems and Negro spirituals.
all men believe by the love you show. You can have doctrine all day. These kids are looking at what we do, how we deal with each other.
Gospel music in Trinity.
And I'm talking about kids that are looking at people that go to church.
For the Pentecostal people, sanctified people.
See if the church is ever there to help them, etc. And they make their own
The
assessments.
church decided to change before they called anybody to be their pastor. The church looked at, are we going to be a black church in the black community? Because at that point they had nothing related to the community at all. No programs related. We're sitting next to the project. Nothing for the project. Nothing for reading, tutorial.
That project today
It was just us.
is-
My mother used to call the theology.
This summer, 2020, so many murders we can't count.
No more amen.
That's why we intended to bring the blood off them streets and nail it to the door of the church. So we can repent.
That's what we are. We got out white people, doctor. You had what, 60 minutes worth of worship? You got 68 minutes on Communion Sunday. You got 8, we'll give you 8 more minutes. Are we gonna keep doing this, or are we gonna be a black church? And they decided to be a black church before they called me. In fact, the slogan, my predecessor coined that slogan, we are unashamedly black and unapologetically Christian. Now, can you lead us in this direction? They asked everybody who candidated for the church, can you lead us in this new direction? I said, me? Be like throwing a rabbit in a briar patch. Come on, let's get it.
So this is what he got
they
rejected about. They
decided
tried to
change.
discredit
So
Obama
that
for
you-
going to
why?
that
Because
church.
now we're at 72. We're at 72, 1972. Blacks were leaving the church. We had conservative, reactionary, recalcitrant, conservative
Some of
Uncle
it.
Toms in the city of Chicago who preached sermons against the natural, all that African mess y'all wearing, dashiki. And young people were leaving the church, some joining the Nation, some joining Black Hebrew Israelite Nation, which is headquartered in Chicago. Others joining that big Christian church that y'all knew as Operation Breadbasket, Operation Push, because they had worship on Saturday. And
That was Jesse Jackson.
members who called me to be their pastor said, we're losing all our young people. Why? Nobody want to be a part of that.
And this is where Chicago is today. It didn't shift.
Nobody, have you ever,
It lost the stewardship. The church lost the stewardship.
But at your age,
Sure
have you
did.
ever
As it is right now.
invited one of your friends to go to a funeral with you? That's what our church services were like.
Yeah. Old skin and old wine. It's dangerous. And it's nothing funny about it. Sometimes you have to allow Joshua's to come forth. Many of you that are of age, you've had your days of glory. The shifts have come now. And the traditions that have stumbled our youth have to be corrected, especially dealing with money and how we handle it.
They have an attitude of doing a mission work with the poor people over here. We're going to have a soup kitchen and a clothes closet. We got a mission for you. How about a ministry with the people in the project? How about let's make the people in the project our members?
Yes.
Because the conversation changes. Yes. You can't be talking about them people when them people are sitting at the table with you.
Right.
That kind of change in mentality is
buying mass land, living together, helping each other with our money.
The shift and evolution.
And therefore, I said they left the brethren behind, so the so-called evangelicals.
Thinking they're going to change them. If they're not ready to change,
right?
You talking about a buzzsaw.
Because that's your brother, and you left him.
Time and theirs, and they will quickly get rid of you.
And them that chose the oppressor's way left them.
They had made a decision to change.
Superiority.
That decision was to be a black church in the black community with programs and ministries that address the reality of the blacks.
Now, the media never did let him, the Fox News never let him tell his side of the story.
Back in 72,
they just said, don't vote for Obama. Because he's a shit.
They can't afford that. So Title 20
too much light
addresses that because you're on a sliding scale. Some parents pay no money. Others they pay depending on the size of the family and income. Programs like that. Programs for mentoring. You heard the segment that Bill Moyers played. One of our members, Judge Pincham, said, black boys can't be what they can't see. If a black boy has never seen a black judge or a black lawyer except going to court, how could he aspire to becoming a young manhood onyx piece? How can you aspire to be what you've never seen? I didn't even know it's possible. I can actually write programs. Having those kind of ministries that address the needs of the community is what the church said they wanted to do, and that's what we did beginning in 72 when they changed. I mean,
now, I would say it was abused. Prosperity message came along, which was okay, but instead of us prospering together, the pastors prospered. And it stumbled even more so, because my people wouldn't go to, my family, my father and mother wouldn't go to church because they called it a business.
Churches, many African American churches around the country is number one, where I grew up in the church and you grew up in the church, and people in their 40s, 50s, let's say 50s and above, grew up in the church. Mm-hmm. The young people today, particularly the millennials, did not grow up in the church.
That's right. So how are you going to, who's in front of you?
At breakfast,
you got to show them.
Lifted a genre that's
you ain't going to reach them by talk only.
Because of the multicultural reality of Fresno State. I heisted a Dr. Watts. There's a genre of music called meter singing, common meter, long meter, short meter. It's a part of the African American tradition, religious tradition, has been a part since the 1800s. When the 1800s, when blacks couldn't read, it was against the law to teach an African how to read. So they took the words of hymnodists, many of whom were European, and put them to African tunes. And the call and response, the African way of singing, they would call out the line and the congregation would answer the line. So that where we grew up knowing common media, in fact, you can go in, I know in the library, well, maybe not the Fresno State Library, but
The exodus out of the church.
Moad in
The main stumbling block was preachers with money and the ideas.
A meter hymn book. Meter hymn books have no notations. They just have the verses.
In poverty,
CM, common meter,
your prosperity
LM,
stuck out
meter,
a lot.
SM, short meter. And
In
one
other
meter
words,
song
it looked like you
how to
capitalized
line it
off the
out
people
so that the congregation can
with
answer.
finances.
You try to
Our
line
good
it out
was
today,
evil
young people,
spoken
they
of.
look at you like, what is that? What'd that do? Anybody got time for
And
that?
today,
They
they
don't
would
know
say
what you're
most
talking
preachers are
about.
pimps in the
So
hoods.
that has changed. That young people weren't raised in the church. My
You
mother
got
used
to show them
yesterday, I
the
was
church.
preaching in Washington,
You have
D.C.,
to
and the
be the
organist during
church.
communion service
You have
started
to
playing
be
those old
family,
hymns of the church.
or you're
I
not
used to
going to
hear my
reach
mother
them,
sing
and you're
that
not going to
while sing
care.
around the house softly and tenderly.
'Cause you
Jesus is calling for you and for me.
don't want to make
And
the
water
shifts.
started. The water, I'm hearing songs.
And that's
of
the
my
loss
mother.
of
These kids' mother,
stewardships.
they heard Nicki Minaj.
There'd be a bunch of old people with a bunch of old people. God help us. The church is in trouble.
So then when you start talking about the differences
But-
in generations, they were not raised in the church.
But the solutions is the genuine love of God flowing through the church by the Holy Spirit as He gets out all this crap America has put in us through the lust of the eyes and pride of life.
What I find different is that the church
The good,
has
keep,
has
spit
to
out the
relate
bad.
to them where they are. You know, you can't correct if you can't connect. If you haven't connected with them, don't even try to correct them.
Right.
They have not been taught code switching.
Earning the
They
right
haven't
to
been
speak.
taught, for instance,
Dale
you
Carnegie,
talk
How to
like a
Win
child
Friends
from
and
your daddy
Influence
watching
People.
Kevin Hart.
We're trying to reach people we don't
All
even
of us
care to
my
reach.
age, we love Richard Pryor.
We don't want to
But you
adjust.
didn't do that in front of your mom and dad.
Commonality, mutuality,
These kids have not been
tactics.
taught. You don't do that. And they don't understand boundaries.
And you know, you have
They
to
don't understand, they don't think they're transgressing any
find something
boundaries.
common.
Riggins, somebody mentioned Riggins here, but there was a Riggins Earl who teaches ethics at the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta. The classic illustration Riggins Earl gave us, when I quoted him, Marty, my
We can go to extreme. Do what I want to do. Boundaries. No boundaries.
But Riggins Earl, I quoted him at the Black Church Confronting the 21st Century Conference held at Vanderbilt Divinity School, 1999-2000. We're going into the 21st century. And I quoted Riggins Earl as an example of what the church needed to be aware of about this current generation. And we all quote that hymn, to serve this present age. All right, what is this present age like? I quoted Riggins Earl. Riggins Earl was saying how the young people in this current age do not know the difference between appropriate language and inappropriate language. And to illustrate his point, he is a professor of ethics at ITC, Interdenominational Theological Center. For his ministry at his church, he volunteers to teach a GED course 3 times a year, 12 weeks, 3 courses, 36 weeks of the year. He goes into project and teaches GED, trying to get all his kids at least a high school diploma. And he said after 5, 6 weeks, you get to know the kids, each class, and you know the names and all that. And he said he was writing up on the chalkboard, getting ready for class to start one evening. He said, I'm a seminary professor, I'm not GQ. So, I mean, it was clean, I got it on. And then he said, I had on, I think, a purple shirt, I had on blue corduroy trousers and some green socks. And when I left my hand up to write on the chalkboard, you could see my green socks. Bobby and Johnny came and sat down right behind me on the front row where they always sit. And Bobby said to Johnny, look at that motherfucker, them green socks. And he turned around, he said, hold on, young man. There's a young lady sitting right behind you, apologize to her. We do not use language like that in front of young ladies. He said, I didn't use no language. He said, you cursed in front of that young woman, apologize to her. He said, Prof, I didn't curse. He said, don't make me put you out of class, man. Apologize to her. He turned to his partner and said, "Will you tell this motherfucker I didn't curse?"
Right. This in Chicago. He's in the project. I'm recording this too.
Cursing to them. When you start talking about bringing them into church, Doc, you better get ready.
We ain't ready. We're not in alignment. We're too judgmental. We're too superior. The elitism is all through the house. It's going to take the genuine love of God and a sanctifying work in our heart
Dr. Johnson, that was
to receive this harvest.
No, Doc, they say something else.
And you better be real about having a genuine interest. This is not do God a favor as much as do yourself a favor.
They think the church is full of crap. What do they got? Preachers of L.A., preachers of Detroit.
Right. He mentioned they go to wealth.
Talking about getting rich.
Right.
Bling, bling.
See?
And they don't want many millennials want nothing to do with the church.
You got to know who's in front of you, who you've been sent to reach. Discern your times.
Because they're where they're at is, what's the point?
What's the point? In serving the Lord just to get rich. I can get rich on my own, sell dope.
And some of the clergy you're identifying?
It didn't work, prosperity preachers.
Or is it just the young people?
And men that taught that need to be ashamed, that taught it from a
reciprocal. I mean, you're seeing a loss.
Pentecostal evangelical set point. Maybe men like Kenneth Copeland, whatever the point is. The floss did more damage to African American hoods than anything. Look at Creflo Dollar. Look how they did him. He had a word, but what he had condemned him. It didn't condemn him before the Lord, but it condemned him in front of the people. As good as evil spoken of. It won't work. Get out of the ministry if you're in it to get over on God's people.
Salt and pepper. They get their theology from hip hop, where we got it from Sunday school, BYPU, and stuff like that. They get the theology from a very different place. And what the church is saying is not speaking to their reality at all. And when it is speaking, it does not put it, as I illustrated earlier today, in any form that they can recognize.
They can recognize it. They want them to convert to the tradition of the way they would do it.
Because from being my age, what I have seen in 7 decades, the church today, when it comes to those shucking and jiving preachers, is the same today as it was when I was a kid. The difference is the media. Okay. See, there wasn't no television. There wasn't no television. When I was growing up, there wasn't no black churches on television. But the media puts the attention. In fact, the media always tries to name for us who our leaders and heroes should be. Right. So when they lift up T.D. Jakes, and they lift up Creflo Dollar, they lift up Bill Winston, they're ignoring, first of all, every church of every race in this country has an average attendance of 200. Not mega churches. But the media doesn't pay them any attention, and all those faithful women of the gospel who pastoring 52 weeks a year, all those faithful men of the gospel who pastoring 52 weeks of the year, who are going to jail, getting mama's kid out, they don't talk about them. There's no media
what the pastors are doing that's positive.
If it bleeds, it leads. It's not important to them.
Like
so we don't see that.
Paying off the debts,
I saw how they ignore
hospital debts. Which has been primarily white pastors that been doing that, but John Gray gave his tithes to somebody. Didn't make the media. It did make YouTube.
In terms of, you got some very serious pastors who are very serious about what they're doing, and they take their calling serious, they take their ministry serious, and you got some other folk who see how to quickly bling bling, how to get some money.
Caused a great stumbling block, especially when poverty was entrenched in Chicago in the early 70s. Ain't no way you're going to pull up in a Rolls Royce. And unless you spread it a lot of bread, that tactic wouldn't work. It stumbled. We got blood everywhere.
What do you think about the role
Gospel wholeness, as far as materialism go, will be through collectivity, just like it was in the scriptures. Acts 2:32, 4:32, 2 Corinthians 8. Chapter 8 and 9. It would be through us eliminating debt and dealing with material things, mass land, communities, buildings, things like that. Not God gonna do it. God didn't come down and build no church building. Right?
every time I speak in tongues, you get mad, upset, nervous about
And
your
anyway,
continuing
I'm gonna cut
stuff
this
like that.
tape. Y'all check it out, man.
No,
Project Restoration.
well,
Jeremiah
just a quick word about
23 and
the
Hood.
problems and the
God
egregious
bless you.
nature of faux pas news. No, excuse me, FAUX news, FOX news, Fox. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Hold on, I'm gonna let him finish. Because they attacked him on his record and Obama for being
Anybody
associated with
trying to
it.
get rid of O'Reilly for his lies, all right? But you take Fox News and what they did to my family, not me, what they did to my family, it's just egregious. That's why I don't want to talk about it.
They don't want to ever be exposed for any wrong. That's that.
If I mess with your son, you ain't gonna be too happy to talk to me about nothing, are you? Well, they messed with my family, the Fox, the newscasters, and the misreporting.
Yeah.
And the see what most people didn't know.
Just because they didn't want Obama to be president.
Was shot.
And they had the
The
Christians.
social sciences was shot. I was not at Trinity.
That spirit came right back, y'all, and split us again through this election. Instead of focusing on Christ, we focusing on some Moses leader. Whether it be Biden, Trump, doesn't matter. Now that Obama couldn't do nothing, everybody's dead on arrival. Right?
And then they took one sermon from 2001, the Sunday after 9/11/01, and one sermon from 205, and took snatches of it out of context to try to scare voters away from the black. They didn't want a black man in their White House.
Right.
That's just egregious.
That's that superior manifest destiny.
They don't want to play the whole sermon because they play the whole sermon, the whole argument would have been lost. That kind of vicious attack,
right,
where you loop it over and over and over.
Well, the Christians, or whoever these Christians are,
jackasses. I'm calling you jackasses.
The Christians was amening them.
Why you having him here?
They're going to turn us left. They're going to turn us evil.
All you know is what the media said. That's all you know.
That's it.
Now,
That was fake news all day.
My name calling, just remember Jesus called the Pharisees sons of asps. He said, you brood of vipers. He said, your mama
I noticed
was an asp.
Fox News agrees with the religious right.
So we try to get off the negative side. The positive side, I think that social media especially is very important and can be used by the church just as it was used in Ferguson. Social media and young people are showing us what's really going on and not what the media is saying is going on.
Yes.
And social media is unlimited in terms of its positive effects and can be used by the church. I was sharing, where was I last night? Where was I last night? Sunday, I was in Washington, D.C., and I was sharing with the pastor there in Washington something I'd never seen before. I was at a church, and who was that asked me about the Bay Area? I was at Harold Mayberry's church in the Bay Area, First African Methodist Episcopal. They have a tweet number that they put up on the screen, like the screen, and at say 11:15 in their service, they tell you to dial whoever you want to have prayer, and everybody gets their cell phones out, and they have prayer while you on the cell phone, tweeted all over the world. You see messages coming in from troops in Afghanistan and troops in Iraq, thanking for prayer. That's so that's. And I said, man, I've never seen this before. Instead of everybody just come to the altar, bow, pray, and go back to your seats. Who you want prayer for? Where are they? Call them right now. Call them right now. And for 5 minutes in the service, the song playing, and the prayer for that whomever you want on the prayer line at that hour. Instances like that make the sky the limit in terms of the positive things and positive
That we could do with these Tech 9s in our hands, the weapons.
Let's give Reverend Wright a round of applause.
God bless y'all. Project Restoration, Jeremiah 23 and Hoods, man. You better be knowing.